Got dreams of being a professional podcaster, but have no idea what you're doing?
This is impossible.
That's about to change.
A new kind of school.
Welcome to the Pod School Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the show. If you are thinking about starting a podcast but you haven't jumped in the deep end yet, then I wanted to give you a few questions that it is a good idea to ask before you get started to make sure that you give yourself the greatest chance of success. One of the great things about podcasting is that it has given the means and the technology and the platform to millions of people so that you no longer have to sort of knock on the door of a radio station and say, "Excuse me, here's a demo tape. Would you please let me get in front of a microphone?" Now, if you've got content and a great idea to share, you can create the show yourself and actually get it out in front of a really big audience if you're doing it right. But that is not guaranteed. Podcasting is one of those things where a lot of people are getting very interested in it, but without any real sense of the time and the effort that it takes, and the fact that success is actually very hard to come by. You need to be consistently delivering a really high quality product, particularly now when there are so many podcasts out there and they're really, really high quality, and you've got an incredible playing field of amazing shows. You really need to step up and deliver if you're going to compete and thrive in that space. Just because it's little old you in your lounge room doesn't mean that you can't be an incredible success, but you have to know what you're getting into so that you can make sure that the show that you have is all that you want it to be, rather than something that you do for a few months and think, oh God, this isn't great, nobody's listening, and then let it die like so many podcasts before have. So some of the questions that you should ask yourself before you get started. The first is, who am I doing this for? This is just a great exercise generally when you're coming up with your podcast content, because designing an ideal listener, somebody that you are actually doing the show for, will help you come up with content and make decisions about your show before you actually have an audience. So for example, if you think to yourself, okay, my ideal listener is Jan, she's 38, she's got 3 kids, she's a busy mom, she's got a job that she is trying to juggle with her kids and she doesn't have a lot of time on her hands, then that really can inform some of the decisions that you make about the style and the structure of your show. So I'm sure Jan is going to appreciate a really kick-ass 10-minute show as opposed to a long meandering, when are we getting to the point 45-minute episode that she just doesn't have time to listen to. The other thing, of course, that you could think about if you're thinking this show is for a busy mum is, all right, I'm probably not going to drop the F-bomb because Jan's in the car with the kids and she probably doesn't want to explain what the F-bomb is. So when you haven't got a show yet and you haven't got an audience yet, so you can't send them an email or ask them to send in their thoughts, having a design of an ideal listener gives you a tool to help you be a bit more strategic about your content decisions. Before you've started your show, the other thing that it helps you work out is whether you actually have an audience in mind or whether you're just wanting to start a podcast because you want to be on a podcast. Now, if that's actually the reason, if you look deep down in your soul and you are 100,000% honest with yourself, it is going to be hard to make that show a success. Maybe you could do it, you could be one of the few that does it, but ultimately for your show to be a success, your content has to be helping people, whether that's entertaining them or educating them. It needs to serve a purpose for the person that's consuming it. If the purpose is just, I just want to say I'm a podcaster, it's going to be really hard to find listeners and, more importantly, keep those listeners hanging around, because as soon as somebody listens to content and they think, hang on a second, this is more about this person's audio show reel than it is about content that I want to consume, then it's going to be hard to find an audience. So be honest with yourself about who you're doing it for. And if it is somebody specific, then really sit down and write out who that person is so that it can help you make content decisions about your show. The second question you should ask yourself is, do I have a niche for my show? Now, I'm sure if you've been looking around and researching podcasting, you will have heard about this idea of having a podcast niche. You might think to yourself, well, hang on a second, wouldn't I be shutting out people if I was trying to appeal to less of them? Don't I want to appeal to everyone? But the problem with trying to appeal to everyone is you become almost impossible to define. If you're someone that already has an existing profile, an existing fan base, and people are just going to be searching for you and what you do anyway, that's a different story. You are able to actually create more of a general show because the niche niche is actually you and people who are interested in what you do. But if you are an unknown and you are starting up your profile and starting up podcasting from scratch, then it's unlikely that people are going to be searching for you. So you want to be able to find a topic area that people will be looking for. The other good thing about having a niche is that it actually helps you come up with ideas. The enemy of the creative person is somebody saying, just do whatever you want. Creativity needs some parameters. It makes it a lot easier when you have a kind of defined box in which your stuff sits to think about ideas within that box. If you're just coming up with ideas about whatever and everything and anything, it can be really hard to work out what you actually want to make a show about. So having those kind of limits can actually improve your content. And you want something that you can easily define when you're talking to people. If your idea can be sold to somebody brand new in one sentence, then it's going to be much easier to get them over the line to listen than if you just say, oh, my podcast's just a show about things where I talk about stuff I'm interested in. Don't know that that's going to be appealing to too many people. Unless they really like you personally, then they might listen. But most of the people that are going to listen to your show as you grow it aren't going to know you. So you really want to come up with an idea that's easily definable. The third question to ask yourself is, do I have time? I wish podcasting was as easy as just sitting down in front of a microphone, saying a few words, and watching the listeners flood in. Unfortunately, it takes a bucket load of time to get a show up and happening, not to mention the time it takes to actually share that show. You have to be delivering content consistently to build an audience, which means you can't drop an episode now and then think, oh, I'll do another one in a few weeks or a few months' time. You've also got editing, you've got social media to think about, you've got the prep and the planning. If you're doing interviews, you've got to book guests. There's so much that goes into each individual episode. So the more you can know about how long it takes, the more prepared you'll be when you actually jump in the deep end. I think a lot of people start podcasting thinking it's going to take a lot less time than it does, listening to a half-hour episode of their favorite show and thinking, oh, I just have to put half an hour's work into this, and then realizing, oh, crap, this is many hours of my week. If you are doing that on top of a job and other commitments, it can become too hard very, very fast. And it's a huge reason why there are so many podcasts out there that no longer produce any episodes, because people sit down in front of a microphone and realize it's tougher than they thought. So understanding whether you have time to commit to your show can help you make some more realistic decisions about when you should start it. Batch recording your episodes, so recording a bunch at a time, this is only obviously possible if you're not doing topical content, can really help you out, because you don't want to, if you can help it, be creating episodes every single week, because I tell you, those 7 days come around real bloody quickly. So the more you can do to get ahead of yourself, the better prepared you will be. But maybe you need to be more realistic about your timeline. If you have got a crazy 6 months coming up, perhaps you start to record a few episodes in the interim and you think, okay, well, I'll just push my release date back for 6 months and see how much content I can get in the can in the lead up. It's also a good opportunity for you to practice and to see how long it takes you to put together your episodes and prepare everything that goes around your episodes, like your social media and your show notes and all that stuff, so that when you do start, you know what you're getting into, and that will increase your chances of success. The fourth question is, am I doing this to make money? Oh, dear friend, if the answer to that question is yes, wow, how am I going to break this to you? It is going to be tough. Podcasting is indeed something that you can make money from, but you have to have a loyal following before you can monetize that following. Basically, brands that associate with your podcast and put ads on your shows are buying into that trust that people have in you. They are buying into that connection that you have built with an audience, because that trust is what makes an audience go, oh, I'm going to try out that product, or I'm going to buy from that supplier. So that's really what you need to generate to actually have any kind of meaningful response to your advertisements. But that takes time. That doesn't happen overnight. And if you start a podcast and it takes a long time to build an audience, and you don't really want to be doing that except for the money, it is going to be a long, hefty grind to get to that point. And ultimately, if you don't really enjoy what you're doing, that that comes out in the content, people can hear that. You are in an intimate space right in their heads. If you do not love what you're doing, it is going to come across in your show, and that's going to be hard to build an audience when people kind of know, I don't reckon this person's really into this. So think about whether you are being realistic about your expectations. If you just have a passion for what you do and you're thinking, I need to get this into people's ears because I think it could really entertain them, inspire them, inform them, then that is the best place to do it. Then if you're not making money, it won't matter because you know that you're doing something that you want to be doing, that people are finding helpful and useful, and then the money will come from that. But it'll take a while to build something that you can monetize. The final question that you need to ask yourself is, why do I want to do this? If the answer is because everybody else is doing it and you think you should jump on the podcasting bandwagon, cool your jets. As I mentioned before, if you are not doing it from a place of passion and actually wanting to get this content into people's ears because you know that people will enjoy it, it is going to be a tough slog that you will not get through. It will be real easy to throw in the towel and just say, bugger it. And if you're going to start it, there's no reason to start something if you're not going to really give it your best shot. So think about whether you are doing this for an audience. Think about whether you are doing it because you want that content to get in people's ears because you know it's going to help them or entertain them. And think about whether it's because you're passionate about this stuff, because then the ride will be a joy, but it will be a real punish if that's not the reason that you're doing it. Hopefully, if you ask yourself those 5 questions, you get to the end of the little test and you realize, I am doing this for the right reasons. And if that is the case, go forth, podcast, be a gigantic success, I implore you. And I really hope that you do make an incredible success of your show. But like anything, it is really important to know what you're getting into and to do it for the right reasons. If you want a little bit of extra help starting your podcast, then make sure you check out my online podcasting course at podschool.com.au, where I take you step by step through everything, including coming up with your idea all the way to turning that show into a business. Thanks so much for listening. I will see you next week. And until then, happy podcasting.
That's all for today.